Tommy Ivan sat cross-legged on his bed, his biology textbook lying forgotten beside him. The early morning sunlight filtered through the curtains of his room, casting a soft glow on his boyish features. But Tommy wasn't paying attention to any of it. His focus was entirely fixed on the small gap between his curtains that perfectly framed the neighboring house, and more specifically, Derek Sanchez, the man who had stolen his young heart. Derek, 10 years older and effortlessly handsome, was in his room, his window directly across from Tommy's. Derek had just begun his daily exercise routine, and Tommy could feel his pulse quicken as he watched. Dressed in nothing but a pair of grey sweatpants, Derek's bare chest glistened slightly with the effort of his workout. His muscles rippled as he moved, his biceps flexing with each push-up. Tommy was perched like a spy behind the curtain, clutching the fabric tightly as he peered out. "Oh my God," he whispered to himself, his cheeks flushing a deep red. "How can anyone be this perfect?" As if on cue, Derek stood up and wiped the sweat from his forehead with the hem of his sweatpants, briefly exposing the waistband of his Calvin Klein boxers. Tommy's breath hitched. He crouched lower, his eyes wide and glued to the scene unfolding in front of him. Suddenly, Derek turned his head and looked directly at Tommy's window. "Oh, crap!" Tommy hissed, diving behind the curtain like a soldier avoiding enemy fire. His heart pounded wildly in his chest as he pressed his back against the wall. Did he see me? No, he couldn't have seen me. Could he? Tommy peeked out again, ever so cautiously, only to find Derek standing there with the faintest hint of a smile tugging at his lips. "He knows," Tommy muttered, his ears burning with embarrassment. "Oh, God, he knows." But Derek didn't seem bothered. In fact, he raised an eyebrow and smirked before casually stretching his arms over his head, his movements slow and deliberate, as if putting on a show. Tommy's jaw dropped. Is he? No, he couldn't be doing that on purpose. Could he? As if to answer Tommy's question, Derek turned his back to the window and hooked his thumbs into the waistband of his sweatpants. In one smooth motion, he slid them down, leaving himself in nothing but a pair of red Calvin Klein boxers. Tommy let out an audible gasp. "What the?" he sputtered, his face turning scarlet. He clapped a hand over his mouth, horrified at the sound he'd just made. Derek, still facing away, bent slightly to adjust his socks, giving Tommy an accidental, or perhaps entirely intentional, view of his toned legs and the curve of his backside. Tommy felt like his entire body was on fire. "I need water. No, I need an ocean. I need holy water," Tommy whispered, fanning himself as beads of sweat formed on his forehead. When Derek turned around to face the window again, Tommy froze like a deer caught in headlights. Their eyes locked for a split second, and Derek's smirk grew wider. Tommy's gaze involuntarily drifted downward to Derek's torso, then lower, and, "Nope, nope, nope." Tommy yelped, stumbling away from the window. His knee hit the side of his bed, and he collapsed onto the mattress, groaning. Why does he have to be so perfect? He buried his face in his hands, trying to will away the vivid image of Derek standing there, practically glowing in the sunlight. But the more he tried not to think about it, the more the image burned itself into his brain. As he lay there, debating whether or not to peek again, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. He grabbed it, praying for a distraction, but when he saw the text, his stomach dropped. "Morning, Tommy. Enjoying the view." Tommy nearly dropped the phone. "What the hell?" he exclaimed, sitting up so fast that his head spun. He stared at the message, his mind racing. Was Derek teasing him? Or worse, did Derek actually know he'd been watching? Heart pounding, Tommy decided to play it cool, or as cool as a flustered 15-year-old could manage. Tommy replied, "What view? I don't know what you're talking about." The response came almost immediately. "Sure you don't. Have a good day, little spy." Tommy groaned, flopping back onto his bed. "I am so dead," he muttered. As he lay there, staring at the ceiling, his mind wandered back to Derek's smirk and the teasing glint in his eyes. Despite his embarrassment, Tommy couldn't help but smile. "Someday," he whispered to himself, "you'll take me seriously, Derek. Someday, you'll see me as more than just the kid next door." For now, though, Tommy had to settle for stolen glimpses and unspoken dreams. But in his heart, he knew one thing for certain. His childhood crush on Derek Sanchez was anything but fleeting. It was a fire that refused to be extinguished. Tommy was no ordinary 15-year-old. Born into one of the most prestigious families in the country, he was the son of two renowned surgeons who had made waves in the medical field. His mother, Dr. Elizabeth Cruz Ivans, was a sought-after celebrity plastic surgeon, frequently featured on TV for her transformative work and luxurious lifestyle. His father, Dr. Robert Ivans, a half-American, half-Filipino neurosurgeon, was equally celebrated, known for performing groundbreaking surgeries that saved countless lives. Despite their demanding careers, Elizabeth and Robert doted on their only child. They made up for their busy schedules by showering Tommy with affection and spoiling him with everything he could ever want. As a result, Tommy grew up in a world of love and privilege, but he never became entitled. Instead, he blossomed into a bubbly, happy teenager with a heart full of love. Tommy was a vision of youthful charm. His delicate features were reminiscent of a K-pop idol, specifically Younghoon of the boys. With soft, flawless skin, expressive almond-shaped eyes, and a shy but disarming smile, he turned heads wherever he went. His jet-black hair, always slightly tousled as if he had just rolled out of bed, only added to his charm. Standing at 5'8", Tommy was tall for his age, with a slender but athletic frame, thanks to his love for swimming. However, despite all the attention he received from his peers, Tommy only had eyes for one person, Derek Sanchez, the handsome neighbor who had captured his heart. Derek lived next door in a sprawling ancestral home with his grandfather, Don Emilio Sanchez, a retired businessman known for his no-nonsense demeanor but soft spot for Tommy. Tommy often visited Don Emilio, bringing him cookies baked by their housekeeper or just chatting with him about school and life. "Tommy," Don Emilio would often say with a chuckle, "you're the grandson I wish I had. You're so full of life, unlike Derek, who always acts like he's carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders." Tommy would laugh at that, his cheeks tinged pink. "I think Derek's just busy being an adult, Lolo," he'd reply. "But don't worry. I'll make him smile more. I promise." Tommy truly believed he had a chance with Derek. With Don Emilio firmly on his side, Tommy felt like he had the universe's approval. If Derek's grandfather adored him, surely Derek would come around eventually, right? That morning, as Tommy peeked through his bedroom window, he replayed one of his conversations with Don Emilio in his mind. "Lolo Emilio," Tommy had said during one of their afternoon chats, "what if I told you I wanted to marry Derek someday?" Don Emilio had raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. "You? Marry Derek? And why should I let you marry my grandson, hum?" "Because I love him," Tommy declared with all the conviction of a smitten teenager. "And I'll take care of him better than anyone else." Don Emilio had laughed so hard that day he nearly spilled his coffee. But he had also patted Tommy on the shoulder and said, "Well, if you're serious about that, Hijo, then I'll hold you to it. You'd make a fine husband for Derek, I think." Those words played in Tommy's head now as he gazed at Derek through the gap in his curtains. "One day," he whispered to himself, "I'll make you see me, Derek. I'll make you realize I'm the one for you." As Derek stretched in front of his window, showing off his chiseled abs and strong arms, Tommy sighed dreamily. "Look at him," he murmured. "So perfect. So." "Tommy." A voice jolted him out of his thoughts. It was their housekeeper, ailing Nina, calling from downstairs. "Breakfast is ready, Hijo." "I'll be right there." Tommy called back, but his eyes remained glued to Derek. Just then, Derek turned toward the window, locking eyes with Tommy for a brief moment. Tommy's breath caught in his throat, and he ducked behind the curtain. "I'm doomed," he whispered, clutching the fabric tightly. But curiosity got the better of him, and he peeked out again. To his shock, Derek was smiling. No, smirking. Tommy's face burned red. Does he know I was watching? Oh, God, what if he does? Before Tommy could spiral further, his phone buzzed on the desk. He grabbed it and froze when he saw the sender. "Good morning, my little spy." Tommy stared at the message, his heart pounding. Did Derek really know? How? Was it obvious? His fingers trembled as he typed back. "Spy? Me? I don't know what you're talking about." The reply came almost instantly. "Sure you don't. Just don't drool on the curtains, okay?" Tommy groaned and dropped his phone onto the bed. "I hate him," he muttered, though his racing heart said otherwise. As he got up to head downstairs for breakfast, he glanced at himself in the mirror. "You're gonna make him fall for you someday, Tommy," he told his reflection. "You've got the looks, the charm, and Lollo Emilio on your side. It's only a matter of time. With renewed determination, Tommy straightened his shoulders and headed downstairs, ready to face the day and whatever teasing Derek might throw his way next. Derek stood in his room, toweling off the light sheen of sweat from his workout. At 25 years old, Derek was the epitome of a fine man. With features that could rival the likes of Chris Evans, he was every bit the classic heartthrob. His chiseled jawline, piercing blue eyes, and perfectly styled dark blonde hair gave him a striking presence that turned heads wherever he went. His broad shoulders and toned physique, a result of rigorous workouts, only added to his commanding aura. But Derek wasn't just about looks. As the CEO of Sanchez Holdings, he carried the weight of his family's legacy on his shoulders. With his parents traveling the world and enjoying their semi-retirement, the responsibility of managing their vast empire fell squarely on his lap. At a young age, Derek had developed a reputation in the business world for being ruthless, decisive, and unyielding. People respected him, even feared him, but it came at a cost. Living in the Grand Sanchez ancestral home with his grandfather, Don Emilio, was a reminder of the family's power and influence. While Derek often came across as serious and unapproachable, his soft spot for his Lollo Emilio was undeniable. The old man was one of the few people who could bring out Derek's rare smiles. After finishing his workout, Derek glanced toward the window of the room next to his. He leaned casually against the frame, his gaze drawn to the familiar sight of Tommy Ivans. The 15-year-old was in his room, singing and dancing with unrestrained joy. Dressed in an oversized hoodie and sweatpants, Tommy twirled around with a hairbrush in hand, belting out lyrics to a K-pop song at the top of his lungs. His black hair flopped into his eyes as he spun, and his laughter echoed faintly through the glass. Derek couldn't help but chuckle. "That kid," he muttered under his breath, shaking his head. "Does he ever stop?" Despite himself, Derek found Tommy's antics entertaining. There was a certain lightness about the boy, an infectious energy that seemed to brighten even the dullest mornings. Derek rested his chin on his palm, watching as Tommy transitioned into a dramatic pose, as if he were performing on stage. It was no secret to Derek that Tommy liked him in a way that went beyond neighborly affection. The boy's stolen glances, nervous stammers, and over-the-top declarations of love were impossible to miss. At first, Derek had dismissed it as a harmless crush, the kind of childish infatuation that would fade with time. He even played along occasionally, teasing Tommy just to see his flustered reactions. "Morning, little spy," Derek had texted earlier after catching Tommy watching him through the window. He smirked at the memory of Tommy's wide-eyed panic. The kid was too easy to read. But deep down, Derek knew better than to take Tommy's feelings seriously. For one, Tommy was 10 years younger than him, a gap that felt like an ocean at their current ages. Secondly, Derek was already in a relationship. Granted, his girlfriend, Bianca, wasn't someone he saw a future with, but she was still there, a convenient companion to maintain appearances in his social circle. Derek's gaze softened as he continued to watch Tommy. "He's too young," he murmured to himself, "and way too innocent for someone like me." Just then, Tommy turned toward the window, mid-dance, and froze. Their eyes met. "Oh, crap!" Tommy yelped, immediately diving behind his curtains. Derek laughed, a deep, rich sound that echoed in his room. He leaned closer to the window, cupping his hands around his mouth. "Don't stop now, superstar," he called out, his voice teasing. There was no response from Tommy's side, but Derek could see the boy's shadow moving frantically behind the curtains. "Relax, kid," Derek said, his tone light. "I've seen worse performances." Still no answer. Derek smirked and pulled out his phone. "Don't worry, I won't tell anyone about your secret concert." A minute later, his phone buzzed with a reply. "You're the worst." Derek chuckled. He leaned back against the window frame, shaking his head. Tommy was something else, pure, unfiltered, and completely unapologetic about his feelings. "You'll grow out of it," Derek muttered, almost as if reassuring himself. "One day, you'll find someone your age who'll love you back. Someone who deserves you." But as he turned away from the window and headed for the shower, a small part of him wondered why the thought of Tommy moving on left an unfamiliar ache in his chest. Meanwhile, Tommy, still hiding behind his curtains, clutched his phone to his chest. His heart was racing, his face red from both embarrassment and excitement. "He saw me," Tommy whispered to himself, a giddy smile spreading across his lips. And he laughed. He actually laughed. Sliding down to the floor, Tommy let out a dreamy sigh. Someday, Derek. Someday, you'll see me differently. For now, though, Tommy was content with stolen moments and playful texts. His crush might be unrequited, but it was enough to make his heart soar.